They've stood for more than 4,500 years, towering over the desert, older than Rome, older than the Bible, stone giants that refuse to be forgotten. The Great Pyramids of Giza, built with mathematical precision, aligned to the stars, and rising from the sands in near-perfect symmetry. But here's the question that won't go away. Who really built them? Was it slaves under the whip of pharaohs? Was it aliens, as some conspiracy theories love to claim? Or was the truth something even more incredible and deeply human? The truth is, what we've been told is only part of the story. Behind every block of limestone is a story of innovation, ambition, and real people whose names history nearly erased. Today, we peel back the myths, challenge the conspiracies, and reveal the astonishing truth about who really built the pyramids of Egypt. It's time to trade the mystery for something even more awe-inspiring: reality. The slave myth, what Hollywood got wrong. When people think about the construction of the pyramids, a particular image tends to come to mind. Long lines of gaunt, sun-beaten slaves dragging massive stones under the lash of merciless overseers. It's a picture burned into our cultural memory by countless movies, biblical epics, and schoolroom illustrations. But here's the thing. This image isn't supported by archaeology. It's supported by Hollywood. The slave myth likely stems from ancient Greek historians and was later reinforced by religious texts, including early interpretations of the Book of Exodus. In these versions, the Israelites were said to have been enslaved by the Egyptians and forced to build monumental structures. However, most scholars today agree that the pyramids of Giza were completed around 2560 BCE, over 1,000 years before the first mention of Israelites in Egyptian records. The idea persisted, however, because it fit a compelling and convenient narrative: the triumph of the downtrodden over tyranny. It made for good drama, and later compelling religious allegory. The story of slavery, suffering, and eventual deliverance became deeply embedded in Western interpretations of Egyptian history. But the real story, uncovered by archaeology, paints a very different picture. In the 1990s, Egyptologist Dr. Zahi Hawass and archaeologist Mark Lehner led excavations near the Giza Plateau. What they discovered changed everything. Just south of the Great Pyramid, their teams unearthed what came to be known as the Workers' Village, a network of barracks, bakeries, administrative buildings, and cemeteries. These weren't the makeshift shelters of slaves. These were organized, planned facilities meant to house and sustain a large, skilled labor force. They also found something even more revealing: the tombs of the workers themselves. These men were buried in honor, close to the pyramids they helped build. Their graves contained provisions for the afterlife: bread, beer, pottery. These weren't the graves of slaves. Slaves, especially in ancient Egypt, were not buried in such a respectful manner. These were laborers with status, with families, with a sense of purpose. One of the tombs contained a skeleton with evidence of arthritis in the spine and wear on the joints, classic signs of heavy labor. But next to it were jars of beer and loaves of bread, traditional offerings for the journey into the afterlife. These men were celebrated, not cast aside. According to Mark Lehner, estimates suggest around 20,000 to 30,000 workers were involved in building the Great Pyramid, far fewer than the 100,000 or more once believed. But they weren't dragged in chains. They were likely recruited from across Egypt, rotating in shifts of a few months, well-fed and cared for. Recent studies even showed that they consumed a high-calorie diet, mainly in the form of bread, meat, and beer. That's not to say it wasn't hard work. It absolutely was. The kind of labor that breaks your back and reshapes your hands. But it wasn't done under the threat of death. It was done with something far more powerful: national pride. These workers were part of something monumental, literally. The pyramids weren't just tombs. They were expressions of cosmic harmony, political power, and spiritual belief. To help build one was to participate in the eternal order of the universe. It was, in many ways, sacred labor. So why does the slave myth endure? Because myths are sticky. They simplify complexity. They offer clear villains and clear victims. And for centuries, Egypt was romanticized or demonized through foreign eyes. From the Greeks to the Romans to 19th century European colonialists, the image of the cruel pharaoh and the suffering slave was easier to process than the truth of a motivated workforce driven by culture, ritual, and duty. Hollywood didn't help. Films like The Ten Commandments, 1956, and The Prince of Egypt, 1998, reinforced this image, cementing it in the minds of millions. These stories were powerful, emotionally resonant, and not entirely accurate. The reality? The pyramids were built not by slaves, but by teams of skilled laborers, stonecutters, engineers, architects, bakers, brewers, and transport workers, who believed they were contributing to something eternal. And in a sense, they were. Their work still stands, inspires, and rises over the desert like a stone hymn to human ambition. In the next section, we'll go even deeper into who these workers were, how they lived, and why their legacy deserves to be remembered, not as slaves, but as builders of wonders. Who they really were, the workforce of the Pharaohs. So, if the pyramids weren't built by slaves, then who did do the building? Who were the people who gave their lives, sometimes quite literally, to stacking 2.3 million blocks of stone, each weighing between 1.5 and 2 tons, into perfect mathematical harmony? The answer begins with a simple, powerful idea: national service. In ancient Egypt, particularly during the reign of Pharaoh Khufu, around 2589 to 2566 BCE, civic duty wasn't something forced by oppression. It was woven into the culture. Egypt was one of the world's first nation-states. It had centralized leadership, a unified language, and a common religion. It also had something few other ancient civilizations could claim: stability. The Nile flooded like clockwork each year, depositing fertile silt and supporting a cycle of agriculture that sustained the civilization. But during the off-season, when farming was paused, many Egyptians rotated into government projects. Building the pyramids was one of the biggest and most prestigious of these. Farmers, craftsmen, and artisans would travel from across the Nile Valley to Giza, knowing that for a few months they'd be part of something enormous, something sacred. And they weren't alone. The pyramid workforce was divided into organized, specialized units. Teams of workers were split into crews of about 2,000, further divided into groups of 100, and then into gangs of 20. These units had names like Friends of Khufu or the Drunkards of Menkaura. And that's not just archaeologists' humor. These names are etched in stone. Graffiti found inside quarries, tombs, and ramps show a sense of camaraderie and even competition among these teams. They were proud of their work. The workforce included not only laborers and haulers, but also masons, stone carvers, toolmakers, cooks, brewers, scribes, and physicians. This was a self-sufficient, complex labor city, complete with housing, granaries, and even hospitals. Laner and Hawass discovered a large structure believed to be a central bakery. There were cattle bones by the thousands, suggesting that meat was routinely served. These workers were not scraping by. They were sustained, supported, and in many ways honored. We even know some of their names. Thanks to tomb inscriptions in ostraka, fragments of limestone used for notes, we've found records of individuals like Meri-Ankh, a mason supervisor, and Ankh-Ka, a foreman. These weren't anonymous slaves. These were respected craftsmen with roles, responsibilities, and legacies. Imagine a young stone hauler named Seti, living in the workers' village with his crew. His day began before sunrise, when the cool desert air still lingered. He might start by hauling limestone blocks from the riverbank, where ships delivered them from Tura. He would be a part of a team using wooden sleds, lubricated with water to reduce friction, a technique proven effective through modern physics experiments. Seti's hands were calloused, but he was fed, clothed, and had a family in the village. He knew his efforts weren't in vain. He could look up at the rising pyramid and say, "I helped build that." Workers like Seti weren't disposable. Injured laborers received care. Remains discovered in Giza showed healed bones and even surgeries, signs that medical attention was part of the village life. This wasn't a disposable workforce, it was a vital one. This also helps explain how Egypt managed to maintain such massive construction projects without revolt. The pharaoh wasn't just a king, he was a god king, a divine being whose authority came from the gods. Building his eternal home wasn't just a job, it was a spiritual mission. And the spiritual aspect ran deep. The entire pyramid project was rooted in Ma'at, the Egyptian principle of cosmic order, balance, and truth. Workers saw their roles as part of a larger harmony. Life didn't end at death. The pyramid was the gateway to the afterlife. To build it was to participate in eternity. In today's terms, this labor force wasn't enslaved. It was a combination of conscripted citizens, proud craftsmen, and well-fed seasonal workers contributing to their nation's greatest symbol. Their purpose? to help the pharaoh reach the stars and secure the prosperity of the realm. This is why archaeologists like Lehner argue that the pyramid builders were more like an ancient corps of engineers than an oppressed underclass. They lived in dignity, worked with skill, and believed in the power of what they were doing. And when they died, many were buried near the pyramids, an honor granted only to those who served the state and the gods. So the next time you see the Great Pyramid, don't just imagine slaves under the whip. Picture a thriving village. Picture laughing, hard work, singing, and firelight. Picture teams of craftsmen swapping stories and challenging each other to carve straighter lines, haul faster, and build higher. They weren't slaves, they were builders, and they were extraordinary. The rise of the alien theory and why it persisted. The theory that aliens built the pyramids has captured imaginations for decades. Popularized by Eric Van Daniken's 1968 book Chariots of the Gods, the idea suggests ancient civilizations couldn't have constructed such advanced monuments without extraterrestrial help. But this theory, while entertaining, lacks archaeological evidence and often reveals more about modern bias than ancient ingenuity. In truth, the Egyptians had the tools, knowledge, and workforce to achieve what they did. They surveyed land, aligned structures with celestial bodies, and used copper tools, sleds, and ramps to shape stone with remarkable precision. The grandeur of the pyramids doesn't imply alien help. It demonstrates extraordinary human skill. The alien theory lingers because it's mysterious and dramatic. But when we credit myths instead of people, we erase the real achievements of ancient engineers, artisans, and laborers. The truth is not only more respectful, it's more impressive. The pyramids weren't built by visitors from the stars. They were built by us. Conclusion: the Great Pyramids weren't built by slaves or aliens. They were built by visionaries, by architects, engineers, artists, and thousands of dedicated workers who believed in something bigger than themselves. They moved mountains, carved symmetry from stone, and gave the world a legacy that still stirs awe. The truth isn't less exciting than the myths. It's more profound, because it reminds us that with unity, ingenuity, and purpose, human beings are capable of shaping the world in ways that echo through eternity. The pyramids are proof, not of mystery, but of mastery, not of myth, but of humanity at its most magnificent. How would you like to get a deeper understanding of history, impress your friends, and predict the future more accurately based on past events? If this sounds like something you might be into, then check out the brand new Captivating History Book Club by clicking the first link in the description. To learn more about Egypt and more epic moments from its history, check out our book, History of Egypt, a captivating guide to Egyptian history, starting from ancient Egypt and the Nile through the Persians, Alexander the Great, and the Ottoman Empire to the present. It's available as an ebook, paperback, and audiobook. If you found the video captivating, please hit the like button and subscribe for more videos like this.